They may not have to suffer on this earth. They may be able to get away with things. That does not mean doing nothing.
Welcome to Coffee with the Couple Cure, where we share practical tips for your relationship before you finish your first cup. Here's Jay and Lori Pyatt.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Couple Cure. I'm Jay.
And I'm Lori.
Today on episode 14, we're continuing on to the second half of the Serenity Prayer, the original written by Reinhold Niebuhr. Most people that go to the Celebrate Recovery groups will recognize the second half, which we read fully in the last episode, but just one more time. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next.
The first thing I love about this part is the living one day at a time. I know that's a huge phrase that's used in 12-step recovery groups. One day at a time, one day at a time. The thing I love about this is it talks about what I needed, and that is enjoying one moment at a time. There were times where I only knew about the one day at a time slogan or phrase. And I was like, but I am hardly, I just need to take it one little snippet of a day at a time. And whenever I read that the first time at the CR group, I was like, oh, wow, that's actually a thing, It's actually a thing in the 12-step group. So that was like healing oil to my bones at that point, just because it gave legitimacy to the fact that sometimes one day is just too long after betrayal. Sometimes I need to take it one moment at a time. But another thing I like is that it says enjoying one moment at a time. And I think it gives a vital truth there that joy or joyful times are momentary. I think everybody thinks, we're going to get healed, we're going to get recovered, and then it's going to be just one joy fest until Jesus comes back. No, that's heaven. And if we expect that to be the case, then we kind of get a little demanding for heaven on earth, and we're going to be sorely disappointed. So if we can take the moments as they come and really, truly enjoy them, slowing down enough to enjoy them, which is my issue, then we're going to see kind of the height of what can be experienced on this earth, which is just joy one moment at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really hear that for you and for the women who are hurting. For the addict, one of the biggest problems addicts have is they're not good at staying in the moment. They want to be in the moment that's not this moment. If this moment is unpleasant in any way, whether it's boring or it's lonely, some emotional content that I'm just not okay with, I don't want to be in this moment anymore as an addict. So if I can learn to enjoy this moment, even if it's something challenging, which is the next line, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, accepting, if I can sit in a lonely moment or a boring moment.
Or a moment where somebody's confronting you on something you've done.
Right. A moment that's hard for me. If I can sit in those moments, there's a lot of value to be gained in them versus trying to run away from them. And so many of those moments that I tried to run away from led to me abusing Lori. Either by shouting at her and saying I didn't want to talk about it, or being intimidating in some way so that she would stop talking to me, or fleeing the conversation altogether because I didn't want to be in that moment anymore. What that leads to is, instead of staying in this moment, I now have 15 more moments that I'm going to have to fix in the future.
Right, and it didn't lead to peace.
No, it did not.
I'm sure if you could tell younger Jay,
Oh my gosh.
it's going to be so much easier just to stop resisting.
Yeah.
I think you would definitely tell him. But one thing on that I want to point out is women, we can accept a lot of hardship. We can put up with a lot. Yet we need to find out, is it leading to true peace? Is it leading to pseudo-peace, where it's just like he changes a little bit, and then it turns out that he's actually gotten worse over time, which can indicate the abusive dance, where he placates her and says, okay, I'll do whatever you need to, and then comes back even harsher than before. So over time, just like we talked about last time, it can take time to gain that wisdom to know the difference between what a person's going to do and what they're not. But over time, if it's not leading to true peace, then that's not what this is talking about here.
Right.
It's not like, okay, put up with it, be abused, become a doormat. That's not this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the eye of the storm versus no storm at all. If you're in the eye of the storm where, okay, everything's calmed back down, but as long as nobody moves, nothing bad's going to happen. Instead of, no, we're truly at peace. We've talked it through. We've had the conversation. We've gotten all of the words out in the open. And we're not just maintaining radio silence in order to keep things from getting stirred up again.
One thing I want to point out about the pathway to peace, the scriptural component or the scriptural backing to that is guard your heart. When I was a new Christian, I always thought guard your heart meant like guard it from sin. And I believe that's true. But I also now believe like guard your heart against people who would abuse you. Guard your heart against people who would mistreat you. Yeah, get some space and pray for them, but definitely get space. So that's just something I wanted to throw in there. The next one says, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is. I'm going to let you tell your thoughts on it because I have a different thought for betrayal.
I think this goes back to what we were saying toward the end of the last episode about having the serenity to accept things, how we go about accepting them, whether I'm white knuckling it and just saying, oh, I hate this moment, or how Jesus stepped into things. As far as I know, the church is not meant to be a group of excluders. We're not meant to keep other people out. We're meant to welcome people in.
To draw them to something higher, to
Right.
draw them to something more satisfying for them and for the kingdom,
Yeah.
better for the kingdom.
It's not about staying in our sin, it's about moving forward. But if we cannot take the world as it is, we will constantly be running back to some sort of addictive behavior. Again, I think that's about expectations and so on, and we'll get into that in the next few things.
Taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is. Jesus did a lot of teaching. It's not like he just said, well, do whatever you want and, you're invited to the kingdom. He did a lot of teaching. He did a lot of rebuking, that sort of thing, especially for the people who would strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Taking the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. That definitely speaks to kind of both sides. If a addict is like, oh, but I really want it this way, if he lands there and stays there, he's probably, just like Jay said earlier, going to use again. It can also look like harming, like a betrayed spouse harming herself over, or subjecting herself, allowing herself to be subjected to harm over and over and over again in order to maintain the relationship, when it's clear that the other person really doesn't want that. When it's clear that the other person wants to act out or wants to abuse.
Now, the next line says, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will.
The if.
Yeah,
is
the
a big
if
part,
part, right? So going back to the first part of this prayer, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. If I surrender to the will of God, things may change. If I keep telling God, no, this is not the way I want it to be, then I am not trusting God that he'll make things right. Now, they may not have to suffer for them on this earth. They may, they may be able to get away with things. And so if we can surrender to the will of God, surrender does not mean laying down and doing nothing. Because the will of God may be, now is the time for your courage. Now is the time for you to do something to change the thing that has been wreaking havoc in your life. And so you may have to surrender to God's will that calls you into a place that your life is at stake. And that may be what it takes to change the things which can be changed. But surrender is not passivity. Surrender is God saying, my will for you is to do something that is not easily done. And that's my plan for making this right.
The trusting that you will make all things right is much different than trusting I can force a solution or muscle something into place. Again, we're supposed to do what we can, I believe, with God's help, do what we can to see what can be changed. But over time, we do just need to trust that God's going to make things right. God's going to take up my cause. God will exert whatever pain or loss needs to be exerted in order for whoever to get the message that God's trying to teach them. And I mean, for betrayed spouses, when they get to this point where they have tried to get both of them to where they said they wanted to be, and it only turns out that the person, the spouse doesn't want to get there, would rather continue hurting her. When they get to that point of surrendering to God's will, as it is in that moment, their level of trust can really skyrocket. I mean, it's really kind of a beautiful thing where their life turns around fairly quickly and the pain stops fairly quickly, replaced with a deeper relationship with God. And that can happen for the addict too.
Right. Trusting God, there's this word, or I guess there's two words that we use sometimes interchangeably, which is safe and secure. We think that if we're safe, we're also secure. Trusting God is knowing that we're safe. Trusting God does not mean we will always be secure.
Or feel secure.
There will always be an element of risk, which is what security is about. I want no risk. That's not going to happen. But am I safe in the hands of God? Yes. I think Jesus showed the two aspects of this really well in going to the cross. He knew he was safe, but it wasn't secure. There was a risk. And so trusting God does not mean we're going to feel totally secure, but we know that he's going somewhere and I'm always going to be safe. So.
And it's not for nothing. We're not praying just to surrender. We're praying, according to the next line, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life. And that's huge. It's not going to feel like heaven, And like I said before, to demand that it's like heaven, well, that's just us being demanding. But we can be reasonably happy in this life. And again, enjoying one moment at a time. But God does want our happiness. And it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to wait until we have a great relationship, until we've conquered our addiction fully, until we're walking in significant long-term freedom. It doesn't have to wait until then. In fact, if you can pick up the reasonable happiness in your life, that can start creating the endorphins and the oxytocin and the dopamine that we used to depend on for our addiction, or through our addiction.
The way our culture talks is, if you're not happy at every single moment, something must be wrong.
Yeah, buy this thing.
Whether it's your popularity on social media or the things that you have in your driveway or the type of house or the type of wife, that they will make you happy permanently. We're shooting for reasonably happy, which is somewhere around the word okay. Things are good. They're not, when
They're
Lori,
not ecstatic. They're not.
yeah, one of the tools Lori and I use is, where are we on a scale from 1 to 10? Well, we're normally somewhere between 6 and maybe 8.5, but we're rarely at a 10.
Yeah, we're not like boom, boom, 10, 10, 10,
Yeah.
10. We've gone through long seasons of like a lot of 9s,
Yeah.
but
10's not sustainable. That's one of those things that we just have to deal with here in our world, is hardship is a pathway to peace. And so we're going to have hardship to find peace, and then we can be reasonably happy in the midst of hardship.
I will say this, though, that the relationship with Jesus can be up there. It can definitely be up there on a regular basis.
Right.
I'm talking like 9s, some 10s, but much more regularly than relationships on this earth.
Yeah. And then to be supremely happy with you forever in the next. That is our hope. That's what the Christian word tells us. Again, going back to step 3, if you write a resume for who you want your God to be, hopefully you're asking for him to be with you in the next life and to give you an eternity of joy. And I think that's been promised through Christ. And I look forward to that day. Not that I'm like pursuing,
He doesn't have a death wish.
No, I don't have a death wish. I like being reasonably happy in this life, and I look forward to whatever the next one brings.
Right. The supremely happy with you forever in the next life, that has to do with delayed gratification. Those last 2 lines have to do with delayed gratification. Think about it this way. I've heard drug addicts say, you're always chasing that first high, meaning the first time you take a drug, it's such a new high, it's such a new experience, and thereafter you're always chasing that feeling again, but I don't know, it might fry certain parts of your brain to where you can never feel that again through that chemical. Therefore, you have to do, try a new one. So you're always chasing that first high. I personally believe that's the same for porn addicts. That the first time you see something that really knocks that out of the park for you, nothing will ever satisfy you again to the same extent. So I think chasing supreme happiness on this earth can be a bit unsatisfying. Yeah. So if we scale back and go, you know what? If in this life I can only be reasonably happy, then I'm going to pursue that, and I'll do the rest of this living one day at a time, enjoying moment by moment kind of things, accepting hardship, taking this world as it is. I think if you're to do those things and become really practiced, really good at it, become an expert in those things, I think you will find more reasonably happy moments in this life.
Right. If I can accept what is and not run away from it, I can at least be at peace. I can have my serenity in a moment that I cannot change. And instead of it taking me from a 10 to a 0 or below, I can allow it to take me from a 10 maybe to an 8. And then when that moment passes, I can go back up again. But I'm not allowing my serenity to be connected to how is the rest of the world around me right now.
Right. And I do want to make a side note. When you were talking about accepting things, what came to mind was this isn't like, well, my wife's just never going to get off of this thing. It's accepting like listening to her and accepting the truth that's coming from that side of the relationship, in that, wow, I really hurt this person. Right. Because that, while difficult, that will lead to more peace than, oh my gosh, I have to listen to her again. And,
Right.
you know, I mean, that's not very peaceful. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a form of a denial than acceptance. So I think that wraps it up for today. Again, please like the video, leave any comments below. We really would love to hear from you. And
Realize your name will be attached to those, so make sure you're signed into a Google account that doesn't personally identify you if you don't want to be attached, if you don't want to have your name attached to the comment. But
yeah, or at least give us a thumbs up. You know, that doesn't attach you to anything, so that'd be nice. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
bye, everyone.
Bye.